We're live here at kbar.com, sitting with Ben Saunders, the one and only from UFC 245. Super excited about this interview. This is going to be awesome. As we did with Matt Brown, we're doing this on the road. Ben's busy in camp. He's got a lot going on. I'm so excited about this. Ben and I share a bunch of mutual friendships that go way back in his life and back in mine. I'm so excited to have you on, Ben. This is fucking awesome. No one could ask for anything better. You got UFC 245 coming up. Kind of a legacy match in some ways with Matt. This is going to be freaking awesome. But before we get to that, tell me a little bit about your transition and coming here to Las Vegas now to train, to do your camps, to work down with Casey. What's it been like? What's the transition been like, and how excited are you?
Honestly, it's been a big change, but it all worked out fantastic. One of the greatest things with the collaboration is one, Coach Casey in 10th Planet Las Vegas. He is probably hands down one of the most knowledgeable MMA coaches in the 10th Planet system, I believe. And him being out here in Vegas has allowed me to go to the UFC Performance Institute, and a lot of people that don't know exactly what that place and facility is, it is hands down one of the greatest places I think any athlete could possibly go. They have rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, almost any form of weight training and cardio training, explosive training. But again, one of the greatest things was I was able to come out here, do a lot of recovery, rehab, and strength and conditioning leading into my training camp while doing my transition. And I also am working with Eddie at Extreme Couture. So basically, yeah. So basically, fantastic striking coach. Him combined with Casey, they are a dynamic duo in the MMA world, in my opinion, as far as coaches are concerned. And they both, the collaboration of both of them together, along with the collaboration of the UFC Performance Institute. Again, we got Heather being the head of the physical therapy over at Performance Institute, and I've been working with Kyle for my strength and conditioning on the side over there. But we also have Tara and Bobby, who are fantastic physical therapists as well. The combination, this is what I believe every athlete should have, needs to have, if they're trying to not only fight at the highest level, but achieve maximum
Performance, yeah.
Yeah, performance and ultimately get their body in the best shape and the best physical
state of readiness. I mean,
yeah.
At this point, it's and this is a deeper question. You come to the realization this is your career, this is your vocation, and you've kind of grown through the process of seeing UFC put up the PI and see that become kind of a beacon for you guys to go to and train and participate in. Now, I know every athlete kind of probably says like, no, I got to move to Vegas and I got to be a big fighter and I got to be a big star. You took kind of the long way getting there because now you're at the point where this is my life and this is what I'm going to be doing and I'm going to be involved in this in some way for a long time to come. And you took the plunge and you made the move and you came out here. It's not easy. You leave a lot of relationships behind. Nobody talks about that. You leave a lot of friendships behind and you're kind of figuring it out now what your career is going to look like the next 3 to 5 years. And it's kind of serendipitous that you have this match with Matt, and it's a bit of a legacy match, and it's a bit of a match where both of you are going to get in the octagon, both with such rich history in the UFC, such a storied, career for both of you, in a division that's white hot right now, probably the hottest division right now in the UFC. And it's got to be a little bit of a pinch yourself moment because you have to be excited about what George doing, George Masvidal. You have to be excited about what you see coming up with Usman and Colby. It's just added so much fire to the pan with that division. And you guys have a white hot match at 245. I mean, you have to pinch yourself because that card is loaded. I mean, you have to be excited about it. And I know how serious you're taking training because just even putting this together, it was, crazy to carve out 45 minutes to get together, and we've known each other for a while now. But I'm excited for you, and how exciting is it being in that division, being around that team, and being involved in that card?
Man, the opportunity to be on that card and ultimately to be able to fight Matt Brown is, I mean, it's a staple in my career, no doubt about it. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. Me and him have a lot of similarities as far as bringing brutality and violence into that octagon. And I think we're both very keen on showing our craft and showing our violent, I guess you could say, skill set against each other. I thought this fight and this matchup actually would have happened quite some time ago. I'm happy that it's actually being able to happen now and on a card that could be considered
one of the best cards ever.
Card of the year.
Honestly,
sure.
I mean, I'm not saying it to blow smoke up your ass. It could be one of the best cards I've seen in a long time, and me following the UFC, hands down, probably one of the best cards in the last 20 or 30 cards, easily. I put it right up there. You have top down. What do you have? 4 title matches on it now.
At least 3. Is there 4?
You have Colby's. You have a bunch. You have a whole slew. And you guys are like, it's crazy, but you guys are like mid card. It's insane. I mean, I honestly think that that's crazy. So I think everybody's going to get what they asked for. I've heard those tickets are going for $1,000 a piece just to get in the building, retail. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see it play out. Having a relationship with both you and Matt has been a lot of fun through the years, and I'm going to be torn to shit. I'm rooting for both of you to just put on a fucking unbelievable show. What is it about these legacy matches that we're seeing pop up in the UFC that has really helped and enhanced a lot of you guys' careers in many ways, because the UFC is almost paying homage not just to you guys but to the history of the game by getting some of these folks together? I mean, we've seen so many of them throughout the year. It has to mean a lot for it to be Matt in this position, like you said, because you've kind of said it, something could have happened many times. But we've seen these before, and this is one that I think a lot of people have played maybe in the video game, have seen, but never seen the real thing. It's got to be a surreal moment. I'm excited for both of you. And what do you think this means for the UFC?
Man, the UFC, it's hard to kind of even comprehend where it was to where it is now.
Right.
Because there's been such a crazy fluctuation and drop in
maturation and the whole thing.
Well, if you think about it, like when I first got in the UFC on the Ultimate Fighter 6, we were dealing with our sport granted, after the Ultimate Fighter Season 1, Stephan Bonner versus Forrest Griffin, obviously blowing it up and saving our sport from being shut down, we were still trying so hard to get sanctioned in every state. I mean, there were still states that weren't even allowing it, and we just got New York, man, not too long ago, and it's 2019 right now. So, like, when I think of where we were back in the day, and it was really more like, it wasn't do and say anything to get publicity, do and say anything to get the buzz going. It was whatever you say and you do better be or should be in a positive light for the sport, because we're trying so hard to save this.
And it was so virginal, it was so fragile. It was at a point where it could have gone either way, and everybody had to be a little careful, a little bit of kid gloves in how they approached it. But you've grown through that. You've been a part of that, and it's exciting to see guys like you who are really pioneers of not just the UFC, jiu-jitsu, and everything else coming into this mainstream. I was saying it the other day to a friend, in some ways, we have to be marching a little bit towards a jiu-jitsu bubble, and we're seeing wrestling come in. And I was actually talking to Tony about it the other day, Real World Tactical, and I was talking to Ruben about it. At what point, with the rise of wrestling now and grappling, do we see more wrestling schools come in? Is there too many jiu-jitsu schools? How does it all shake out?
Well, wrestling is a rough one because, in my opinion, a lot of people that are into wrestling and get into it with it, whether it be in middle school or younger, leading into collegiate, leading in from collegiate, usually the goal was Olympics, right? So that was what used to be the goal and the potential aftermath of collegiate wrestling. But now I think it's almost become pretty much a staple that whether you're high school or collegiate wrestling, there is the potential of becoming a pro MMA fighter as your aftermath, as your if Olympics don't work out, as your next go-to. And ultimately with wrestling, the better you are at wrestling, if you can dictate where the fight takes place, whether you're using it to keep the fight standing or using it to take the fight to the ground, that is a very, very important aspect of the overall MMA game.
Yeah, I mean, all fighting is a management of distance, right? You know, we've seen John Jones manage distance so well. You see Stylebender manage distance so well. It's come to me that the top guys stay in the game the longest because they're managing distance. And that's one of the things that I feel wrestling, incorporating wrestling, Muay Thai, the striking and the kicking, and you see a lot of guys doing leg kicks more and more and more. And in the early UFCs, the first 100 of them, you saw almost none of that. And you're seeing grappling, as you said, the standing, keeping guys on their feet, coming into play, using the fence properly is really, really something. But I feel, and the reason I brought up the jiu-jitsu bubble, that you're gonna have to see, and Eddie talked about this a little bit recently when Eddie was in town, you see more of the gyms incorporating the wrestling into the jiu-jitsu gyms and bringing more of those aspects into it, you know, and people forget some of those double leg takedowns and single legs. A lot of those are wrestling principles. Is that something you'd like to see come more and more into jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, and bringing wrestling coaches in, or do you want to keep it tried and true jiu-jitsu?
I think that would really be dictated school to school and how the instructor or owner of the academy wants to run their program. I do believe that knowing basic fundamental takedowns is very beneficial and very important ultimately, because whether or not you're wanting to use them to take people down, knowing what could be used against you to take you down is the same thing. So knowing how to do it is the same thing as knowing what could be done to you. Maybe you don't know how to defend it, but at least you know what they're going for. You understand the process. Again, I think most jiu-jitsu places tend to include some form of wrestling. Just in some places, it depends on the instructor whether or not it is a high priority or medium or low priority. I think the biggest thing you need to realize is if you're at a place that's not incorporating wrestling or takedowns or takedown defense in your curriculum or in your teaching process, you may be limiting your students with the reality of, I mean, ultimately,
a self-defense situation.
Ultimately,
or
jiu-jitsu is
match.
a martial art built for self-defense, and all self-defense is, you're never going to just, like in a street fight, someone comes at you and you're going to probably just jump to your butt and like butt scoot towards them. I mean, it's possible, but it's also possible you jump to your butt and there's more than one and they're soccer keeping you.
It's
So
not a good look.
Right. You couldn't Minori roll them, but you know.
And you don't see a lot of that in the UFC. I mean, that flies in more EBI or ADCC and in that type of competitive environment. You see guys want to provoke it. We saw it as recently as it was at the Kron Gracie match. You know, he was trying to go him into, coming at him that way. But, you know, for the most part, the reason I say a jiu-jitsu bubble is there's so many jiu-jitsu gyms out there. There's so many people with different curriculums. So I brought this up to a few fighters. Is there too many gyms right now? Is it too saturated? And do they have to do something different? You know, like incorporate the wrestling and incorporate some different things? Or is there enough to support it all continuously? That's one of the questions that I've asked a lot of fighters. What do you think? I
think, well, more than anything, when you're running a business, location, right? It's is there a lot there that you're going to be having to compete with, or is it kind of droughted? So you're kind of
the only game in town.
The only game in town, so you can do it however you want. if it's if there's a lot around, that makes it very difficult because 2 to 3 things come into play. Okay, one, your marketing and getting people to know who you are, where you are, and all that, and getting that out there, I think is always going to be key. Obviously, as I already said, location. You know, if your place is looking run down or kind of not up to par in comparison to the other places that people might look at, they might not even take you seriously. But then it's also like your credentials. Where do you come from? What are your credentials? You know, what's your background? Do you have anything to support that other than just saying you're you?
And you can give a belt.
Right,
Exactly.
that you're you can give a belt.
So I want to ask you, you know, we're going to get to the fight, but I want to ask you a couple of $1 million questions a lot of people want to know. Tell me about the division, what gets you excited about the division, and who you think is going to come out of this clusterfuck, in plain English, of great fighters. And I say that like it's almost like you have such a convergence. The winner of this fight between you and Matt's going to be tossed right into the mix. You have Ben, who's kind of on the outs now. He's saying he's done, but you have Georgie coming out of that as a clear cut, you know, guy to be dealt with. You have Colby, you have Usman. Who comes out of this, and how does this all shake out?
Man, that's a rough one because I have to say, welterweight is probably up there. It could be questionable of between 55 and between lightweight and welterweight. You know, who has the most in the division and who is the most dangerous. I mean, when you're talking about the amount of fighters, it seems 170 and 155 tend to worldwide have the most fighters that can reach those 2 weight classes pretty easily. And ultimately, you're dealing within those 2 weight classes, you're dealing with, man, these guys got knockout power ability, speed ability, technical ability, and cardio ability. So like when you go lower, below 155, the speed goes up, but the power goes down. And when you go above 70, the speed goes down, but the power goes up. But also the cardio tends to go down the higher in the weight that you go. So as far as the amount of output and cardio output that they can put be within each round tends to go down. So I believe 55 and 70 seem to be in that hot spot where they could, and they tend to battle back and forth of, I don't really believe there's an ultimate, you know. But if you're gonna pick between the 2, those 2 seem to be battling out the most as having the 2 best weight classes for people that can ultimately do it all, if
right.
you will, have all the attributes that can bring excitement and bring finishes. The welterweight division, no, man. I mean, I think it definitely was around before lightweight came. So we've been around for so long, and at this point, because the sport has blown up to where it is, there are so many people on the roster, just the UFC roster, let alone just the UFC welterweight side of the roster, that I can't even keep track of all these people. You know, like if you've been in the game as long or close to as long or even half as long as me, I probably for sure know who you are. The new guys coming in, man, your guys' skill set and your guys' talent is going to be so high, but I just personally feel that you're gonna probably, in due time, like it's just stages, you know. It takes stages and time to either immediately get the fight against a high level competitor that you're able to knock out and make a huge name for yourself immediately, or you're gonna have to kind of break and chip away at the block and get those wins that accumulate up to make a name and make a recognition for yourself. Ultimately, for me, my biggest goal was coming into the game from day one was we're coming into the game to bring violence and excitement. This is an entertainment sport. Yes, the win is super crucial and super necessary, but if you aren't able to accomplish getting a win in artistic talent and exciting fashion, how many people are going to be rooting for you, and how much is your fan base even going to build or be there? So that was always a key for me. So I think I've stayed pretty true to that state of mind throughout my entire career every time, and I also believe that's for sure how I got this matchup against someone like Matt Brown. And I don't know Matt really at all personally, and I couldn't tell you what his mental thoughts are on everything, but watching him as a fighter, he seems to be on a similar thought process as me. We're going to bring violence and brutality into that cage, which is exciting, and the fans absolutely love it, but our goal is to win.
Yeah, there's no question it's going to be one of those matches. Now, coming out of the division and giving us the insight, do you think, does Colby beat Usman? How does this play out? Does Georgie come right into the mix, and then one of you guys potentially maybe slides in?
I think, can I change my battery?
Yeah, go ahead.
The battery.
We're doing a battery change.
It is a battery situation.
It's a good thing we didn't do it live.
Would this have been live? Yeah. Normal.
Slight
I'm
technical
it's
difficulty.
so dumb. I should have had two in this bitch, but
Test.
no. This is good. Come on, Jim. Come on. There we go. That one goes that way. Let's see if that works. Yeah.
There you go.
I knew it.
You're hot.
I knew it.
We can reboot the question to make it a little easier.
Well, that's the recording.
Yep.
Funny because I noticed it earlier. And I was gonna throw another battery in that bitch, but I forgot.
Yeah, that's no big deal. We can edit it. So, ready? 3, 2, 1. So I want to ask you, how do we shake this division out? How does this work out? Is it end up being Colby over Usman? Does Usman defeat Colby? Does George get the shot? And then obviously the winner of you guys has to be talked about being in the mix, has to be in that conversation after this fight. How does it all play out in your mind, or where do you see the path? Because I think George has laid out a little bit of the path to getting the shot. I would think he'd be in line if things work out. How do you see it playing out?
This is all weird because like it's hard for me to talk about these kind of things because I feel they could go in so many directions. As far as Usman versus Colby, I think Usman wins. I think if Colby does somehow pull it off, it's because he does his, I'm going to throw a bunch of strikes while trying to come forward, hoping to have Usman go back in a straight line so I can get a body lock and just possibly get a takedown. Maybe, I don't know. It might be hard against Usman, whose wrestling is fantastic. And he's not going to have that crazy size advantage like he did against Dos Anjos, which I felt was pretty much his key to victory. Throw all these strikes out to get the closing of the distance, smash him into the cage, use that size.
Win the points game.
Yeah. I mean, points game, but also GSP old school against BJ Penn, right?
Mhm.
Get him against the cage, wear him out, make him wrestle, get lactic acid buildup, possibly put into those arms and put it into those muscles so you don't have as much fire to pop and really put someone away. Again, Usman, I think, has such a fantastic training camp at Hard Knocks. I think the guys that he trains with over there are so good that he's definitely going to be well prepared. The question at this point, I think they're both going to be very well prepared, and they're both going to be in shape. It's going to be really 2 to 3 things. One, is there an injury or any weird factor that plays a role throughout the training camp or leading into the fight that end up becoming a crippling crutch to help or hinder one or the other? There's always that possibility of a potential bad weight cut situation from either one of them.
Of course.
Not saying that they've ever showed that.
But
that's
people don't
just
talk about that enough.
factor
That's a
in the
real
game.
factor, of
It's a
course.
factor in the game. It can easily play a big role. And then the other thing is, they both have fantastic weight cuts. They both have no injuries. Then we really get to see, at that point, we get to see on fight night, because again, that becomes I feel it physically nothing's a problem. It becomes an emotional and a mental fight of who can have the more emotional control of themselves in the situation, and then who has the mental toughness to either, some might have to fight out of adversity if they're losing a round or two or get hurt or rocked, or some might again have some personal things going on in their life that play most people don't ever factor that in, but that could easily play.
And game plan's another one. I mean, you go
Yep.
into every fight with a game plan. Everybody watches film. Everybody watches tape on a guy, and you look for those ticks and you look for those things. People don't talk about, like you said, a bad weight cut. That's never discussed enough, potentially. And also the potential of going into it with a certain game plan, and maybe that game plan doesn't work out 110%. Maybe you have to change that game plan between round 2 and 5. So potentially being able to pivot and say, okay, this isn't working, we need to go to plan B, and having a plan B. And some people don't have an answer for certain things. We've seen that 100 times in fights. So you have to have an answer for it. It's going to be an interesting night either way. And I appreciate you putting out there that maybe potentially it's Usman's night. But like you said, both guys come in 100%. It's going to be a matter of who overcomes that adversity and who's able to change their game plan. Because I think for a fight like that, just like for a fight with you and Matt, you've got to go into it with 2 or 3 game plans. Like, okay, I'm going to try this. This is going to be one way we're going to look at it. If this doesn't work, I have to be ready to pivot and switch to this tactic or this approach. Because you're just such seasoned guys. It's like going up against a pitcher in baseball that has 5 pitches. Okay, if you can't hit the fastball, you got to have an answer for the curve. If you don't have an answer for the curve, you're going to strike out. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it because you already went down 2 strikes. So you have to have answers for those things, and there's no doubt. It's going to be a super fun night, and then you have some women on the card. You have some awesome stuff that's going to play out. It's going to be exciting either way, however the division plays out. You have to be excited for guys like George because they represent a lot of what even you and Matt represent, kind of that resurgence in terms of his career and what we've seen with him, winning a key fight, having the quick knockdown of Ben, and then throwing himself right into the mix now, and boom, he's there. And you don't know how it's going to play out for him. And he said he's setting his sights even as high as Conor. So he's looking at all kinds of options. He's brought up a bunch of names that I didn't expect him to bring up, but he's looking even beyond to really go after that big fight. And that's the politics of the UFC, right, Ben? I mean, you have to always kind of have your eye on what the big opportunity is for you. and where that can go for you, because you said it's entertainment. Let's say things work out with you and Matt, where does it go from here?
Man, that's a very good question. It's not so much what I ever try to think about before the fight, and some people do think about it before the fight, but the reality is, yeah, you can dream and kind of imagine
The path.
right? When everything and if it all works out perfectly, but I feel there's so much importance of realizing and staying focused on the task at hand, and that is where the real pressure is, and that is where the real danger is. It's not, oh yeah, everything goes my way and then what's next. It's, no, I got this savage in front of me that's going to be trying to murder me. Well, luckily for me, I'm a savage too, and I'm going to be trying to murder him.
Yeah,
So,
of course. The right answer is I'm focused on this right now, right? And,
right.
But you always kind of, say, geez, if this happens, it could lead to this, and that could be fun and exciting. And there's so many, as you brought up with the division, there's so many cool ways it could go. There's so many fun ways it could go, because it's one of those divisions. It's not like a lighter weight division, like you said, that you're kind of limited. There's not a lot of options, and it's not like heavyweight where you're kind of a heavyweight. That's where you are, and that's what makes this division the most exciting in so many ways. Is you can jump around and kind of do so much. I brought up an interesting topic to Matt, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it because it's something I brought up to Colby. I have to, kind of get into you guys' head, because I'm a huge advocate of the fighters, and you guys go crazy putting yourself out there. Matt brought up, he said, when I first retired from the UFC and I was stepping away, he said it was interesting, with the growth of the UFC and how the UFC has grown, they don't have a lot of programs in place for the fighters after the fighting ends. Is that something that you think would be coming? Is that something Dana or Forrest have talked about? Having programs in place, like maybe to help you guys open gyms, help you guys transition into regular life? Because Matt said he was very surprised when he left the UFC. I mean, he's like, nobody calls, nobody's there. Is that something you think with the growth that'll come down the line?
Probably not anytime soon. Again, the difference between us and NBA and NFL and all that is we are considered private contractors, right? So we're not. Yeah, we fight for the UFC, but we're private contractors that fight for UFC, as opposed to being an NBA or an NFL player that is literally an employee of the NBA and the NFL. We do get some more benefits than other organizations, as far as like they have stepped up their game, as far as like there is some medical help that policies put in order to kind of help us as we do our training camps. So if we get injured during a camp or outside of a fight,
you're covered.
Right. We do have, and again, so it's slowly, progressively getting there. But I would have to say, what about boxing? Right? Like, boxing's been here way longer than us. And do they get calls when they retire or end up moving on and doing something?
It's the good and the bad that comes with working with any organization, and I ask it because, some guys stand there and they say, we want that formality that Major League Baseball and the NFL and all that have, but the benefit to being a contractor is if you want to go to another competing organization, you can do that. If you just had to transition, like some guys have, and go to the WWE, guys do that. That's on some guys' radar. I know it's on Colby's. I know it's on a lot of guys. There's good and bad that comes with that. There's exclusivity if you end up, kind of as a UFC employee, but there's a downside that comes with that. And I ask it because, there's been so much growth, and with the rise of the PI and then putting programs in place, I wondered if that was something that would be coming later on or transitioning, how guys can get a gym opened up or builds to the next point of their career, or if that's something you even cared about,
I mean, since day one, it's kind of been I don't think too much has changed. The reality is it's kind of on you as an individual. You can and some people do it, you can open a gym now and then make it to the UFC or make it as a mixed martial artist and use that to help
Springboard. Yeah.
springboard your gym. Or you can be a fighter and be part of one of these organizations and then open up a gym while you're one of these organizations, have it be a springboard. Or you can say that's a lot to juggle and I'm trying to be the best I could possibly be, and if I'm giving even a small percent, there's, in my personal opinion, and the reason I haven't opened up my own gym yet is, how can you be successful if you're not giving a large percentage of your time and your focus on success at whatever your goal is? So if my goal is to be the best fighter I can possibly be in the time span that I'm given to be able to achieve that in, but then I go and open a gym and my goal, because who would open a gym without wanting it to be successful, right? Then you got to be like, well, what percentage am I going to go towards the gym for making that successful, and what's going towards my career? And if you do 50-50, that's great, but you're only really going, and they can collaborate. Don't get me wrong, you can go 50-50, and because you're there and because you're teaching, at least it's something that is incorporated in the martial arts that does transition into your goal of being the best fighter you can be. But being the best, hell, even if we take being a pro fighter out of the mix completely and we just talk about being a gym owner, okay? Right here you have two potential 50-50. Okay, do I want to be the best owner, marketer, and producer for this gym, or do I want to be the best instructor for this gym? Because those are two factors alone in running a gym that you would have to balance out.
Absolutely. It's a great point. And
then it would be three if you're doing it all yourself, right? Or you get people, if you do it, you need people you trust. And when it comes to money in business, that's fickle territory.
And as far as gyms go, some people just don't, like for years in fitness, people would ask me, do you train people? I don't train anyone. And some people, it's just not their thing. They just don't want to be instructors, you know, they don't want to own a gym and they don't want to, it's not their cup of tea. So everybody transitions into something different. And for some people, they just want to transition into something totally different and turn the page. So everybody has a different, everybody has a different approach.
People get burned out.
They'll get burned out, you know, and some people just want to do some different stuff. I think it's exciting to see the little things that UFC puts in as they do put more things in. And I've been to the PI, and it's an outstanding facility, as you touched on earlier. And I think that's only going to expand and grow. And I think you will see some level of, for lack of better words, retirement byproduct put in there, something that'll be available to the guys for years to come, because that's their legacy. But it's all new to them too, because this is all the idea of multiple retired fighters, hundreds of retired fighters out there. This is a new territory for them. They haven't had to deal with this in the past. And in the past, if they look at WWE as a blueprint, they've seen them put programs in place in retirement that they have to take care of the wrestlers and to take care of the guys as they transition. Yeah, they've started to slowly put in programs where they can go. I believe it's to rehab for for their entire life. That's covered. Yeah, and all that stuff's covered for the entirement of their career. And I think you will see something like that come in place. The criteria is going to be the issue. It's going to be, you know, you can't give it to every guy that fought 2 fights in the UFC.
Right.
That's
eligibility.
Yeah, and they have that in the NFL and everywhere else. It's 5 years gets you in the NFL. I believe the retirement program, and then I think you hit another clip at 10 years. So every guy kind of has that. Every organization has that criteria. So whether it's 20 fights or 30 fights or whatever it is that they put in, I think eventually in time, I believe you will see something put in place. It'll be just a matter of time and having the guys kind of speak up. And I know you have huge advocates like Forrest down there and folks that'll speak up eventually and say, hey, it's time we have to look at a program like this or put something in for the guys.
That would be really cool. I mean, I definitely think being eligible for the amount of time you maybe have given or worked with the UFC, that maybe you should be able to go to the UFC PI forever.
Yeah.
Like I think if they do end up making something like that a possibility, that would be fantastic. I think, it would be, yeah, because they can't open up a UFC PI in every state.
Right.
But if you're local or you make the trip, it'd be cool.
And at the very least, put the ability, and it'd be relatively easy for them to do. Put the ability in to maybe do X-rays, maybe at least give people basic, feedback, and have a doctor on staff to sit with you. If that be the case, that would be great. I mean, I think in
That'd
time
be really cool.
it would work its way up to that. There's so much that they can do, and in time, as you guys speak up, and I know working with the team over there, I think that more will come into play, and I think that more will take place. Give me a little insight into the Ben Saunders now and what he would tell the Ben Saunders getting in the fight game in the beginning, because you've had such a career. What would you go back and tell yourself after the first 2 or 3 fights as you were getting into the UFC? Watch your money.
Yeah, of course. But ultimately, I would probably say, dude, I'm so grateful to be where I am right now. I mean, I've been in the game for 16 years as a pro, so it's like, everything I've done wrong, every fault and every decision that has been a bad one that I've chosen has gotten to me right here, right now. So I would say, do everything the exact same, because I wouldn't want to change anything. Because if I changed one thing, it's like time travel, right? We go back, we change one thing, and then what happens? What if everything's completely different? What if I blew my knee out fucking 8 years ago? Where the fuck would I be, right? So like in my head, I'm so grateful, so happy that everything has formed in the way it has. And with every difficulty and every obstacle that I've had to go through, it's only made me stronger, but ultimately it's made me wiser. So my rule of thumb in the entire fight game has always been never lose the same way twice. No matter how it broke down, I've never lost the exact same way twice. You just got to be able to fucking factor these things in. And anytime there's a loss, and hell man, I'm very good at being super critical, overly critical, honestly, of even the wins that I have, where I'm like, how could I have done that better? How can I learn from that experience? And how do we make it so next time it either does or does not happen that exact same way and is more in my favor?
And you can take that into life too.
Oh, 100%.
Never lose the same way twice. I like that. There's another layer to this. What advice would you give? And I know young guys have come up to you, to the young bucks coming in now and walking around the PI. They're like, oh, there's Ben Saunders. What advice would you give them just getting in the game, if they're listening now?
Man, I tell them all basically the exact same thing, and it's the same rule of thumb that I've given myself since day one. Train hard, but train smart. Okay? Tap, tap, tap. When it comes to submissions, tap all day in the gym, because you're not getting paid for that. The injuries that happen there are either going to stay with you for the rest of your life and hinder your career from getting to where it could possibly actually go. Also, pay attention to training stupid with taking blows to the head. I've talked about this in the past as well. It's just a personal thing that I've kind of looked at, because there's been a big difference between me being so tall and lanky, especially for my weight class, but in general, being tall and lanky, I'm able to stay on the outside. I don't need to really get inside and close the distance and take some blows to get inside to get my shots off. I feel very fortunate to be able to come from genetics that gave me this height and length. And I also partly feel, I don't want to say sad. I don't know the proper terminology that I would say, but for my friends and close teammates that have been shorter and stockier, the blows that they have to take to get inside really hurts me, you know, because I love them to death. So like, whether I try not to, obviously knock out or mess up my teammates when we're sparring, but when I do see it happen with other people that are going hard, or even worse, seeing it actually happen in a real live fight,
Sure.
That's something I think every fighter needs to pay attention to. Pay attention to your weight class and pay attention to your height and your reach. If you're fortunate enough to be tall and lanky, that does not mean that you're going to be good at, we're going to be like a giraffe, or, well, I guess a giraffe too, but I was going to say like a
rhino.
no, I was going to say like Bambi, like a fucking deer that doesn't know how to use these gangly lankiness, and we just kind of stumble and fall over.
Sure.
To actually, that's why it takes heavyweights too, right? Like they tend to later on in their career actually start to really put it together in how their body moves and how to use these big, heavy, long, lanky limbs.
Well, it's funny because Eric Anders spent a lot of time talking to me about this, and I didn't realize how much thought went into that because he was a college linebacker. So he had every right to come in and be a heavyweight. And when I was talking to Nicky Rod was like all about being a heavyweight. And Eric was like, when I played football, I had these big bulky muscles. I found that at that lightweight division, and it might even be a little lighter, that he really hits a home run, because he said I had these bulky, muscles, and I didn't really feel I was hitting my best stride. So he transitioned to light heavy, and he may even go lighter down the line. We don't know that yet, we'll see, but he's doing okay at the division he's in now. But he spent about 20 minutes talking about that exact topic and how important that was and how much thought really went into him cutting the weight and bringing his weight down and focusing on where he felt he could excel his best in what division and how that played out. So you brought up an important point, paying attention to your reach, to your height, to your genetics, to your weight. And there's a reason, this is across the board in every sport, right? We see this everywhere. There's a reason most of your Mr. Olympias are 5'9". There's a reason some of your best baseball players are between 6 feet and 6'2". There's something about that range that people just really excel in. And you look at some of the top contenders right now, top fighters right now, Stylebender, John Jones, they're long, they have a lot of reach, they're able to get out there, and like you said, keep the distance, something we talked about, that's important in self-defense, that's important in MMA, that's important in the cage, and maintaining that. And you have, you say lanky, but you have that reach and that ability to play the game in a couple of different spaces. We haven't seen a lot of guys successful that don't have that. For the most part, in boxing, you had Tyson. He was really unique. He was able to get in there and close the gap the way he moved. That's why when you see him in highlights now, he shows a lot of sidestepping, and he was able to get into the body. As time went on, he didn't have such success against the Lennox Lewises and the Evander Holyfields.
And I also feel for him it was speed, right? So he was lighter than all these big monsters at heavyweight, but man, his speed was so fast, and he was able to. You need to know those techniques. Like if you are the shorter, stockier guy, you need to know the proper techniques to get in and out of someone that's taller and lankier. But when that becomes a factor, speed is going to play a key role in you being able to safely get in and get out correctly, and land those shots. But the other thing was, on top of all that, man, I would also say, when we were talking about what you would tell the up and comers is it's not a sprint, it's a long distance run. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to, I don't want to say jump the line, but jump at an opportunity that could be too great for your skill set at the time, or your mental preparation at the time, or maybe you're too young. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to be jumping into anything, I would say the biggest number one factor that my head kickboxing coach, Bobby Robert, Majiro Gym, Dutch Kickboxing, told me since fucking the beginning is cardio kills. Cardio is hands down. I don't care what your skill set is, how good you are. Once you get tired, none of that matters. And cardio is the only thing that you actually have control over. You can't control over anything else in the fight game, but you should be, if you have enough time, have the control to be able to bring your body physically to the highest level of conditioning it can possibly go, so then you can perform to your greatest potential. You can use all the skills and techniques and strategies that you may actually have in your bag of tricks and work in your favor to win a fight. But once you get tired, chances are most of that goes out the window. So for all the young guns coming up, that's what I would say. Train hard, but ultimately train smart. Realize your body type. Then realize what kind of fighter you want to be, because there's martial artists, there's prize fighters, there's brawlers, like there's technicians. You got to see like what's your specialty. Are you a wrestler specialty? Are you well-rounded in everything? Are you striking specialty? Whatever it is, make sure that your specialty is strong, but your weaknesses are something that you're working on fluidly to close those gaps so people aren't able to use them against you. And if you have the cardio to go the entire fight, 100% full clip, then you'll be able to perform to your
Gives
best.
you the best chance.
Yes.
The thing I have to ask too, you've been in the game so long, what fighters do you look at and do you say, geez, I really like their style, or I like their approach, or I like how they do things? Is it the obvious ones like the John Jones, or are there any guys out there you look at and you're like, geez, I really like what he's doing, or how they approach the game?
Man, all of them, all of the above. When I watch fights, I watch it as a technician, seeing how someone's technical setups are, their fight ending finishes, how they're getting those done. I'm always looking at stances and styles, excuse me, and I'm really definitely paying attention to the difference between height, range, and reach. Are people pretty much the same? Is it like almost even on that? So the tail of the tape plays a key role. That's one of my most favorite parts of the fight game, is when the tail of the tape comes up and you get to see someone's age. Weight is usually always the same unless they didn't make weight properly. Right. But you really get to see height, arm reach. Now you're seeing leg reach, which is awesome. And then being able to see the difference in styles and stances. I like specialties. Demi Amaya is one of the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners to ever do it of all time. So when I see him fight, especially the older he gets, you know, you're just like, man, age and time is working against him. But as such a specialist in his game and in his craft, for him to come up with ways to still get these victories, get the back, get these positions is something that I not only really enjoy watching, but I find inspirational. When you see something like John Jones is supposed to win almost every time. So it's like, yeah, I love watching him fight. And yeah, I feel like him being tall and lanky for his weight class is a great example to kind of watch and maybe be like, man, those are some great moves that, you know, maybe you could incorporate. I could incorporate into my own, or maybe we have similarities in those ways. But I definitely, at this, seeing from the beginning of UFC 1 to where it is now, I still get the biggest joy and probably enthusiasm in the fight game when I see specialists. Right. Because that's like old school karate versus judo, or, you know, kickboxer versus jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. UFC 245, the bell rings. How does the fight play out?
Ooh, violence. Oh, brutality and violence, man. There is no doubt in my mind that Matt Brown's coming in. He's going to be very well prepared, just like I am right now. In my head, I can see it playing out in so many different ways and so many different angles and ranges in which I believe that I can win. But ultimately, I'm trying to get a bonus and I'm trying to shock the world.
Of course.
I want to show off some techniques and some skills that have never been seen before. Every time I go in there, I'm looking to make a highlight reel.
I think you're going to have an awesome match. I think you're going to kill it. I think it goes without saying, it's interesting for me having a little bit of a relationship that I have with Matt, having the relationship I have with you. You know, I've not been a guy who's been like this UFC groupie, I guess, you know, whatever. You know, I don't even own a UFC t-shirt or anything, but I support the hell out of you guys, and seeing you both get in the ring is going to be a little bit of a surreal moment for me. Seeing you both get to fight, because I've formed a great relationship with you over the last couple months. And of course, our connection to mutual friends, and of course, Matt over the years, having done podcasts with him in the past. It's going to be so much fun for me when that bell rings and seeing you guys go at it. I'm rooting for both of you. I'm rooting for both of you to have a huge match, and hopefully both guys come out, you know, huge winners. And that's the ideal situation for me. I know that can't happen, so for me, you know, I'm going to watch it kind of just on the edge of my seat, seeing what happens. Obviously, for selfish reasons, I want to see such a great match take place and have you both win in many ways. But we know that can't happen. I think it's going to be the best fight on the card. I hope you guys have match of the night. I think it has the potential to be that, and I think it's one people have wanted to see for a really long time. As far as you and I go, bro, I am so over the moon that I get not only the opportunity to train with you, I get the opportunity to spend time with you, to do interviews like this with you, and I'm hoping we're doing a badass interview after this is all over and you come out on top. So hopefully all those things happen and play into it, and I think you're going to crush it here in Vegas. I think it's the ideal spot for you. I think you're going to flourish. I think you're going to have a great second half of your career here, if I can say that. But, you know, who knows? I mean, you're young enough. People are fighting now to 42, 43, 40. And now Tom Brady's setting the bar to, you know, be in the game for, you know, forever long. So time becomes a non-factor, and you have plenty of a road ahead of you in the way Cowboy fights. I mean, forget it.
Right.
You know, he's fighting, you know, 100 fights. But I think there's the potential for that level of longevity, and I'm excited about where it can go, man. And I can't thank you enough just for your level of friendship and being able to spend the time with you and do stuff like this. It means a lot.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone over at kvar.com for sponsoring this. I want to give a shout out to all the show sponsors, everyone that supports the show. Shout out everything you need to shout out, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Big shout out to Fuji. They're amazing. Go check out their gear. It's at Fuji Sport US. And also thank you to Garden of Life, Thorn. Thank you, 10th Planet, especially Coach Casey, 10th Planet Las Vegas. If you live in Las Vegas, definitely check out. They got 2 gyms, one in Henderson and one in downtown Las Vegas. Thank you to Eddie and everybody that's been helping me at Extreme Couture. Thank you to everybody at the UFC and UFC PI who have been grinding with me since I've moved out here. You guys are awesome. And
where can everyone find you?
Everybody that wants to follow me, you guys can find me on really every social media at Ben Saunders MMA.
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, had a question, do you answer DMs or don't?
Oh yeah, I definitely do.
Come in correct. Slide in correct.